Okay, so this is the choropleths assignment in the maps section of our Studio Cloud. And choropleth might be an unfamiliar term. I think it was unfamiliar to me before I started using it in R, but we've all seen these choropleths. One of the examples I wanted to show you was the election map that you see with red and blue. That's a choropleth. So the idea behind it is that you have different colors associated with some statistic or some measure, like in this case, who the state voted for. I think more commonly for us, it'll be one of these kind of maps where it'll be shades of a color instead of like this one was just red and blue. We'll be looking at some statistic or where there's variations, continuous variations within that number, and then we'll work on shading the map according to that statistic. One of the things that we're going to use is the Census Bureau's maps and a little bit of their data. And so you do need to get an API key, and you can follow this link. And I've already done that. I went ahead and got my API key. It actually took a couple days, so make sure you don't do this at the last minute, but you just basically, let's see if I can show what that looks like here. You basically put your, you can just put MSU Billings and then put your email and then submit. Now it does take a couple days to get to you. I think I got mine, I submitted it on a Friday and I got it, I think on Monday. So I don't know if they just don't do it on weekends or if it just always takes a couple days. But, and I went ahead and copied that out of my email and pasted it in here and then ran this before I made this video so I wouldn't have to show my key up here on YouTube, but you'll need to make sure you do that. So let's run these. We're going to be using this tidy census to access the Census Bureau data, and I think we've used these other ones before. So this get ACS is one of the tidy census commands, and that the ACS is, I think it stands for American Community Survey, and it's one of the data sources that the census gets. And so we're going to use this get ACS and get a map of the US with the states in it. Now you wouldn't have any idea what this variable here is, B01003, but if you look up on the census code book, it has the descriptions of all, you can imagine they have just tons of data. But this particular one here is this population of the state. And so I thought we could just do this just to do a simple one. Geometry is true. That gets us the map, which is really the key reason that we're using the Census Bureau, to get the maps of the states. And we're using this shift. We're going to shift Hawaii and Alaska. I'll show you what that looks like. So I've already, let me run this again. Okay, so there's the state data that appears up there. Slide that over a little bit. And it says to type in states and then run that. So this is just the data that we got from the Census Bureau. I called it states. And you can see it has this estimate. That estimate is the population of the state based on that variable. We can use different variables and get different values under estimate. Another one we'll be using is the income, the average income in the state. But then it has under name, it has the name of the state. And then this, where it says geometry here, this is the mapping data that will allow us to draw the states. And you can see it looks a little different than some of the other data files that we've looked at. And I think it's because it has this geometry data in it. But we can actually use ggplot to create a fairly simple choropleth. So I'm just starting out with the states, sending it to ggplot, and then now instead of using like geom_line to make a line graph, we're using this geom_sf, and that SF stands for simple features, and it's a method for creating maps in ggplot. And then we're going to use this fill to fill the color of the states with that estimate, which is the population. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. And so there's a first choropleth. It's you can see California's big, and so that has large. The estimate is larger, it's lighter blue, and if it's smaller, it's darker. And we should probably change that from that scientific notation there. But that's I think it must be, is it 30 million maybe is the highest? California, New York is big. Montana, Wyoming are dark colors. They're small. But it's not that nice looking. So I thought we could do a few things to improve it. So I'm going to take this, copy it, and then do a couple of additional things here. So I'm going to, remember we use the plus signs in ggplot. And it's this coordinate SM, or SF datum equals NA. And what that'll do is it'll get rid of these coordinates, the latitude, longitude coordinates. I don't think we need those on our map. We're also going to use another color palette. Instead of this kind of purple and blue, we're going to use this viridis, which is a common and kind of a favorite color palette that a lot of people use. And it's, by the way, the C, viridis C, stands for continuous. So this is a continuous measure of population as opposed to discrete, which would be like that election map where you had red and blue. So we're going to use the C because we're using a continuous measure. And then we're going to do our theme minimal, which we've used before to get rid of the gray background, which I think is kind of ugly. And then we're going to add some labels. So we'll use title, we'll say U.S. Population, U.S. state populations. Okay, and see if that makes things look a little better. Okay, so there's that viridis color palette. I think it looks a little nicer. And oh, and I forgot to mention before, this is, see how Alaska and Hawaii are down here. That we get because we did this shift geo equals true. So it allows us to, I guess Alaska is actually, like almost as big as the entire rest of the country, and so it shrinks it, it shifts it over so we can see everything rather than having to see the entire Pacific Ocean, between Hawaii and the continental U.S. Probably should, again, change that scientific notation, but I'll just leave it for now. Now, I wanted to show you another one. Notice that that's a different variable here. And in this case, what I'm going to do is the same thing as this with population, but this time use this instead of that B1003 or whatever it was. I looked it up in the census code book, and this is the median income of each state. And then all the rest of this is the same as I did before, but I just did the viridis and the theme minimal and everything all in one command. And so you can see, the darker ones are the poorer states, so under 50,000. What is that? Mississippi, West Virginia, I think. And then the wealthier ones are yellows. So I don't know what that is. Maryland maybe in there. And Hawaii is doing pretty well, and Alaska, and Montana's kind of below the median of the country, kind of darker. So that's a choropleth map using some census data. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you, this is using the whole U.S. and then dividing it into states. We can also look at an individual state and then get counties. And so this is that same get ACS command as we did above. For some reason, I just didn't, maybe to make it look a little more like it. There, I'll do that. And instead of on one line up above, I had it on separate lines like this. I'm getting the geometry, so I'm getting the maps. This is, again, this is the median income, that B19013. But now I'm getting geography instead of state. It says county, and then I'm putting state equals Montana. And then I'm using that same method with ggplot, and then the fill estimate, and theme minimal, and viridis color palette. Okay, so it downloaded the county income data, and you can see, the lower ones. I don't know, that's Glacier County way up there maybe. That's looks like it's the poorest. county, and you can see maybe near the oil fields up there, wealthier. I don't know what that one is. I think that's Yellowstone, maybe right kind of in the middle there, and that's kind of above average, but um, not the top one. So anyway, I just thought I'd give you another example. You can, and obviously we could do this if we got the map from somewhere else. We could do the world and divide into countries or anything like that. Um, Now, one of the things that we really want to do, instead of just always using the census data, which has a ton of data but might not be very, psychological data like we might want, is we might get the data from somewhere else and then join it with our map data. And so that's what we're going to do here. We're going to use this trendy package to get some Google search data and then plot that on our map. So I thought this is an example where naloxone is it's a drug they used to treat opioid overdoses, and so I thought we'd use this trendy package, see how people are searching for naloxone, and then looking at only at the U.S., and then that'll give us, we'll do this get interest region, which will show us different states, and then and this is in 2019. So searches for naloxone in different states across the U.S. in 2019, and then we'll grab that Google search data and then display it. So there you can see West Virginia had the highest, DC. Let's see where there's Montana kind of in the middle maybe. What are the low ones? Wyoming, Kansas, yeah, we're the low ones. Okay, so what we can do then is we need to use this join command, and it's inner join in this case, to join the state data that we got up here. I think it was our first command that we did, the states, and it got the maps and everything. And then we're going to join that with that naloxone data that we just got from Trendy. Now, one of the problems is that if you look at look at our naloxone, our Google search data, it has the different states, but the variable name is location. Whereas on the other hand, if you look at the census data, the name of the states, it's in a variable called name. And in order to join these properly, we have to name those columns, those variables, the same. And so what I'm going to do here first is rename location. So we're going to start with the state data from the Census Bureau, rename that name column that had the states in it to location, so it matches our Google search data here, and then we're going to join them, and then we'll join it with that naloxone data. Okay, so let's do that. And that shows, so now if you look at, we have one data frame now with the map data here where it says geometry, and then now it also, notice it has the hits. So that hits is from the number of hits in naloxone from Google Trend data. And then the states are under the location column. Okay, so that's what that did. And now I didn't save that. All I did is join it and then display it. So then what we're going to do is it says pipe all of this here that I just copied, the join command, into this ggplot. So what I'm going to do is, and then don't forget to put the pipe in there, and then let's get rid of that space. So all I'm doing is taking this, redoing it in front of the ggplot. And then we're going to fill it, instead of with estimate, like that had the population and income, we're going to fill it with the hits. And by fill, we mean we're going to have the color of the states vary by the number of hits. And then the rest of it is the same, the minimal theme and all the rest of it. Okay, so that is a map of the U.S. Showing which states are searching the most for naloxone, and it looks like West Virginia by a mile is the highest, and Wyoming there is low, And you can see Maine is pretty high. What is that, New Mexico or Arizona? No. Anyway, that's also kind of maybe kind of in the middle. And yeah, so that's how you would use the map data from the census to create the map, but you're mapping the Google search data. Now, another mapping package that we want to use is this leaflet, and that'll allow us, rather than ggplot, which are just static maps, we can use leaflet and get nice interactive maps that we can zoom in and out of and scroll around in. So now, one of the problems with using leaflet is that we're not going to be able to shift Alaska and Hawaii, because we're going to create a large map that you can zoom around in, and Alaska has to be in the right place. So what I'm going to do is get this ACS mapping data again, but if you put a pound sign, the number sign like that in front of something, it'll make it into a comment, so it won't execute it. So I'm gonna get the one thing about using this get ACS command is that you have to get some data, and we're not going to use this income data, but we're going to map the naloxone data again, but we have to get it anyway. But we're just going to leave out that shift geo command, and then call it states leaflet. There, it's downloading it from the Census Bureau. And then, so a real simple command here is, so we're going to start with the state leaflets. We're going to do the add tiles and then add polygons, which will use that geometry data to separate the states. And you can see it's that it won't look very nice. I wanted to show you. One funny thing is it put the little tip of Alaska over here, and then the rest of Alaska there. You can see Hawaii. I think that must be Puerto Rico, maybe. Yeah, which it also, I guess it also included in income. But there you can see it's kind of, there's thick lines, and and obviously we haven't changed any of the colors or anything like that. So I wanted to just start with that. And then it's a little more complicated to create a nice choropleth in leaflet compared to ggplot, but I think it's worth it. I think it looks really nice. And so here's how you do it. So the first thing you need to do is create a color variable, and that's how you do this. We're going to use this Viridis again, and we're going to use the estimate here, which was the I can't remember if I used populate. I think I used income again. And then there's some additional things here. We're going to change the weight. Like if you look at the weight of the line, it's really thick and ugly, so we're going to reduce that. We're going to use the fill color of the state's colors, and then we're going to set the view on the US. Okay, so this does a couple things, and I'm not going into a lot of detail on it, but we can just kind of copy and paste this, and I think it looks a lot nicer. There we go. So we set the zoom, so instead of being zoomed way out, we're kind of zoomed in, and you can see if you scroll around a little bit, you can see Alaska's there, Hawaii's there, Puerto Rico, but it kind of just sets the default view to the continental U.S. And there you can see that the states vary by this kind of more subtle color. You can see the yellow ones are they're the wealthier. Is that right? Yeah, this is income. So these are the wealthier states, and then the darker ones are the poorer states. The last thing I'm going to do here is add a couple of lines under polygon. So where it says label, this add polygons command, label, and I'm going to paste in the name and then the income and then highlight it. And what that will do is allow us to hover over the state, and then there's this pop-up, so it tells you what state it is and what the exact income is. Montana median income is 52,559. California's 71,000. Where was that one? Maryland, 81,000. Wow. Okay, so, and then I wonder if it has, look at Puerto Rico, 20,000. And then Alaska was way up here, 76,000. So you get the idea. Now again, we probably don't want to just use census data, so I want to show you how to join data to a leaflet map. So we've already used that naloxone, so I thought we'd use that naloxone states again. And so we need to create a color palette for it, and then basically just a couple things that I changed here. So added naloxone states, that's what we're going to join it to. And then yeah, search volume and then hits is what we're gonna graph. So what else? And then there's the color palette for hits. Yeah. So let's look at that. So I just using the same data searches on naloxone this time. Okay, so that should be the same as, I can find it again, this one here. But now instead of using ggplot, it's using leaflet, and so we get to scroll around and we get this pop up over it, and it looks a little nicer, I think. Oh, sorry, that's it right here. This is the one. So there's that West Virginia high, Wyoming down there pretty low. Okay, so now the other thing I want to do is have you do one of these examples, and I wanted you to do a new Google Trends search. So if we go back and find where we use that trendy package, I'm just going to copy and paste this here. And it's the assignment is asking you to do another search on on some other topic. So let's do suicide, just to pick an example. Where are people around the country searching the most for suicide? And let's see here. So this is just where we did naloxone. So I'm going to call this one suicide, and I'm going to have trendy look for Google searches on suicide. And let's actually, rather than 2019, let's get a little bit of a broader look. Let's say, what is that, 3-year, 2017, 18, and 19. And then let's change, instead of naloxone states, I'm going to call it suicide states. Sounds gruesome. Suicide, if I can spell correctly here. Suicides, and I'm going to take this suicide, do the get interest by region to put it into suicide states, and then yeah, and then yeah, we'll just look at it. Suicide states. Okay. So that's grabbing that information from Google Trends, and you can see Vermont, Wyoming, Utah had the highest. Wow. And what were the lowest? Let's see. Florida, kind of in the south, had the lowest suicide rates. Montana's number 4. I shouldn't say suicide rates, but searching for the word suicide in Google. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing that we did up here. So I'm just going to copy this, and so rather than naloxone colors, I want suicide colors. And rather than naloxone states, I want suicide states. That was that data frame that we created up above. And basically, yeah, I think just pretty much where it says naloxone, I'm going to change to suicide. I think search volume, naloxone colors, I want that suicide colors at that we're creating right here. Is that it? I think that's all the changes we made. So we're just going to basically recreate this map here, but now with the search hits on suicide rather than naloxone. So let's try that. Okay, so there we go. Yeah, the colors are all kind of in the same range. I wish I have to look at that and see why we don't get very many differences in colors, but you can kind of see, you know, there's Montana, Wyoming, there's that Vermont that was also high, up to 100, but then Florida had one of the lower ones at 70. Yeah, so it seems like like these Rocky Mountain states have high suicide rates, and then maybe north has higher than south. Okay. All right. So I have another video for Montana election, and that's the assignment that I'm going to want you to do. So I will stop there.